Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. This time out, an incredibly flexible and powerful pedal switcher for your pedal board. Today we're checking out the RJM Music Technology Mastermind PBC. Now this is a loop switcher that goes on your pedal board, allows you to take charge of all of your pedals, as well as switching functions on your amp, controlling devices through MIDI, and lots more. The Mastermind PBC is set up with 10 different effects loops, and they're grouped into 3 different sections that you can access either independently or together. The first section contains 4 monophonic loops, and you put pedals there that typically would go in front of your amp. Then there's an insert point, there's another group of 2 loops, and again you could put pedals there that either go in front of your amp or that go into your amp's effects loop. There's another insert point, and then there's the final 4 loops. Now those last 4 loops can either be used in a straight line in front of your amp, or you could put those into your effects loop, and you can operate those in either mono or stereo. You can also operate those 4 loops in either series or parallel. We have 2 outputs that can be routed either simultaneously as stereo outputs to 2 amplifiers, or you can use them separately on and off to control 2 completely different amp settings and switch between the 2 amplifiers. We also have 2 USB ports. Now those serve 2 different functions. The first of those connects up to your computer and allows you to run an editor librarian software app, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. The second of those is designed to connect to a USB flash drive, and that can be used for storing the contents of the memory from the Mastermind PBC, or you can recall the complete contents back into the Mastermind PBC for backing up your presets, or you can also use that for firmware updates. We also have 3 different switchable buffers in the Mastermind PBC, before the first loop, before the 7th loop, and after the 10th loop. And those allow us to set up buffers where they're going to be most useful to us. So for example, if you have a pedal that doesn't react well to a buffer, some fuzz boxes for example, you could turn off that buffer in location number 1 and let the signal go straight into that effects box. When you do want a buffer, you can turn that back on. Now the nice thing is that those 3 buffers can be turned on and off per preset, so you can actually store the settings of those with each of the presets. The Mastermind PBC also has RJM's click stopper technology. Now all the switching is done with relays inside the box, and that can click under certain conditions. The click stopper prevents that from happening. We also have 4 function outputs, and those can be used to control functions on external gear. For example, you might route one of those to change channels on your amplifier. We also have an expression pedal input as well as 2 switch inputs, and those can be routed via MIDI to external gear. The Mastermind PBC is incredibly easy to operate. You can do everything right from the front panel using the foot switches, so you can do it right while you're seated in your chair in front of it. But you can also take charge of all the deep functions using an editor librarian application. Now this box is incredibly deep. It has so much MIDI functionality you can send just about any message from anywhere. You can route things however you like them. You can name presets. You can change the function of all the switches. In fact, each of the presets is 16 pages deep. So we have 11 switches, and each of those 16 pages can contain different functions for those 11 switches. Really a deep box, but as I said, on the surface when you just sit down in front of it, very easy to operate. Let me show you how easy it is. There are 3 basic operating modes for the Mastermind PBC. In the first mode, loops mode, when we hit the loop switch and the red light comes on, basically as we step on a switch, we're bringing one of those loops in and out. So in this case, I'm going straight through. You're just hearing my ES335 straight into a Rivera Venus 3 amplifier. Now in the first loop, I've got a Wampler overdrive connected. When I step on that switch, I turn that loop on. In the third loop, I have a way huge delay. Step on that switch, it turns on that delay. I can turn that off, turn on switch 5, which has my visual sound tap delay. Now we have 10 different loops available to us, so in real time we can switch those 10 loops on and off however we like, basically bringing our effects in and out manually. Our second mode is switches mode. Now when I press the switches switch, it turns things on so that we're accessing secondary functions for each of those foot switches. So let's hit that. Now switches 1 through 4 are controlling those function outputs that we discussed earlier. So for example, if I step on switch 1, I'm changing the channel on my amplifier. Switches 5 and 6 control our outputs. I've got output A and output B. When those are off, there's no signal coming out of those, so I can access just amplifier A, or I can access amplifier B, or both of them for stereo signals. Switches 8 through 10 allow me to turn those buffers on and off. Now typically you'd leave all 3 of those on, but if you do have a pedal where they have a problem with the buffer, you can easily switch that off by just stepping on it. The light goes off and the buffer's turned off. All these settings are also indicated on the LCD screen for the Mastermind PBC. So when I switch on that buffer, you can see that there up toward the center of the LCD screen, the 1 comes on and off as I'm turning that first buffer on and off. Same thing with my function switches at the upper left, and my outputs A and B at the upper right. Now our loops are displayed toward the bottom. So if we go back into loops mode, you can see that we're turning those on and off on the display. Our final mode is preset mode, and this is where you'll typically operate the Mastermind PBC. In preset mode, we can store different configurations of loops, bring those in and out. In fact, all of the settings inside the Mastermind PBC can be stored into a preset, quickly recalled by just stepping on a switch. The Mastermind PBC contains 640 different presets, and those are arranged into banks of 5. So when you step through a bank, you get another group of 5 presets, and you can either set it up so as you move through a bank it automatically recalls the first preset or another preset within the bank, or you can wait until you step to recall the first preset in that bank. Then to move to another bank, simply hit the switch again, select the preset that you want. Preset organization goes beyond that though. We also have song mode, where we can store all the presets for a particular song and quickly access those. You can have up to 16 presets per song. Then there's also set list mode. In set list mode, you call up combinations of songs. Each of those songs has its 16 different presets, so you can have each song all pre-programmed, and as you play through your set at a gig, you can just step from song to song to song, and all your presets are laid out right there in front of you. It's very, very flexible as far as configuring and arranging your presets the way that you want them. At its most basic, preset mode allows us to recall combinations of pedals. So for example, I've got preset 1 programmed to call up loops 1 and loop 3, which contain my overdrive and my analog delay. Preset 2 turns off my overdrive and turns on my digital delay. Preset 3 is the overdrive and the digital delay. Preset 5 is all of my pedals. And there's one more very handy feature, in that you always have access to a global preset. Now in this case, I've got it assigned to the function switch, which is where it defaults here on the far right of the Mastermind PBC, but you can actually assign that to any switch that you like. So right now, when I hit the function switch, it goes to the global preset, and that could be like my standard setting, the one that I use the most during the night, the one that I always want to go back to when I quickly want to get to a sound, just step on global preset, it takes me right back there. In this case, I've programmed the global preset to be all pedals off, but you can set it up to be whatever you like. So that's just my dry amp sound, and then when I want to go to effect, I step on another preset. In preset mode, we also have access to a tuner. When we step on the mute switch, it mutes our output, and we automatically switch to a tuner on the front screen. Let me show you how easy it is to create a preset using the switches on the front panel of the Mastermind PBC. We'll go to our second bank, select our first preset, which in this case is empty. All that I have on, as you can see at the top of the LCD, is I've got the 3 buffers turned on, and I've got both the A and the B outputs turned on. So what I'm going to do is turn on my overdrive and my digital delay and set up a preset containing those 2 pedals. To create a preset, simply navigate to an unused preset. In my case, I'm in preset 6, which is the first one in bank 2. Go into loops mode. Turn on the loops that you want. I'm going to choose 1 and 5, which is my overdrive and my digital delay. And now to store that into preset 6, I just press and hold the loops button. That preset's now stored. Then exit from loop mode back to preset mode. Now if you want to go deeper, there's a lot of editing functionality available to you right from the front panel. To get into the deeper system editing, hold down the 1 and the 3 switch, and you jump to the setup menu, which allows you to access all those deeper parameters. Now we navigate through that using the leftmost buttons, which are the up and down for our menu, so we can scroll through our different menu settings. So for example, we can edit our audio settings. We select using the number 2 button. We can turn the click stop on and off using our value buttons, and then exit. So you can go through all the different settings and set them up that way right from the front panel. It's actually very simple to do it, and you get very fast operating those switches, whether you do it with your feet or you actually lean down and use your hands to press the buttons. You can access virtually any parameter using the setup menu, so you can dig really deep in there. In fact, you can name presets, you can do all types of settings as far as MIDI goes, least significant bit, most significant bit, you can send bank changes, program changes, all kinds of MIDI continuous control functionality. You really have an incredible depth of editing possibilities inside that setup menu for all aspects of the Mastermind PBC. As I've mentioned several times, the Mastermind PBC is incredibly full-featured, and it allows incredibly detailed editing, particularly of MIDI data. If you really want to dig into that, I highly recommend that you check out the Editor Librarian app, which runs on both Mac and PC. I've got it running here on my MacBook Pro. It hooks up with a single USB cable. When you connect it, you simply tell it to connect to your device. It'll connect up. And you can see up here in the upper right that it's connected. And now at this point we have access to all the parameters. So on this global screen we have all the global parameters. For example, we can set our last 4 loops, loops 7 through 10, to series, parallel, or we can set them up so that the trails don't get cut off when you change presets. That's a very useful function. There are actually 4 different mixers built into the Mastermind PBC, and those allow you to do that parallel routing as well as keep those trails intact on echoes and reverbs. Our second page allows us to look at our MIDI devices that we have connected. So you can configure those, you can name them, you can call them up by manufacturer. So for example here we might look at the Pigtronics Infinity Looper. Select that. We can assign its MIDI channel, or its program change offset, maximum program changes, which MIDI port it's on, all sorts of different things you can set up for your MIDI devices. The third page is where we custom program the functionality of each of the buttons. So if we step over here to buttons, on each of these, when we hit the control click, you can assign a different type of message that happens when the button is pushed. You can assign each button to a group. You can assign continuous controllers. So we have lots of controls there. You can copy from different pages, swap from different pages within the different presets and things. So you have a lot of functionality for custom programming each of those switches on the front panel. In our preset page, we can program and name all the different presets. So here, for example, I've set up 5 different presets. I've typed in different names for them. So if we go to preset 1, I've named that drive delay. You name that up here. And you can step through the 16 different pages. Our first page is where we set up what's happening with the presets. Second page is where you decide which loops are turned on. The third page allows you to set up whether the buffers are on, which of the outputs are on, and the position of the function switches as well. Our third page is where we program those song arrangements of presets. So we've got all these different songs available to us here. Each can have 16 different presets, and to select those, we simply choose a location and choose the preset that we want there, and now we can scroll through those very quickly. When you use the bank up and down buttons on the front panel, you move through songs from song to song, and then you can use the individual loop buttons to call up the presets within that song. Our next page is where we set up set lists. Now we can have 64 different set lists, and each of those set lists can contain up to 100 songs. So you have plenty of functionality there for arranging your songs into multiple set lists for multiple venues, multiple gigs. If you're really into MIDI, you can get into system exclusive programming on the next screen. And you can also get into macro programming, which sends out a variety of different actions when buttons are pushed. And then we have our different MIDI functionalities here as well, the receive channel, the MIDI clock settings, whether you're in remote mode, which allows you to chain 2 Mastermind PBCs together. Lots of different functionality available on this screen as well. When you've finished making all the edits that you want inside the application, it's very easy to transfer them into the Mastermind PBC. Simply go up here to the transfer screen, and you can either send just the changes since the last time you sent things over, or you can send the complete contents of the application over into the Mastermind PBC for storage there and for use in real time. You can also offload everything that's inside the Mastermind PBC into the application for backup and storage. If you're looking for a single device to serve as a centerpiece for your guitar rig that'll let you take charge of all your pedals, all your MIDI devices, your amplifier, basically everything that's happening with your signal and with your processors, you can do it all from right inside the Mastermind PBC. It makes a great choice as a centerpiece for your rig. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll have more guitars, more amps, more effects, and we'll be making lots of music. I'm Mitch Gallagher.